Tato. You're still in that garage? My mother asked, slicing cheese for her wine plate. 2 years later, she was filming a YouTube recipe in my franchise kitchen while I raised a glass in a ballroom full of investors. What happened in between made my whole family rethink who the real underdog was. You know that guy in the family everyone rolls their eyes at? The one who always has a project or a big idea, but never quite fits into the clean little boxes everyone else seems to live in? That was me, Trevor Brooks. 35, no degree, no 401k, and no patience for corporate jargon. While my sister Kate was flexing her MBA and my brother Zach was busy being Wells Fargo's golden boy, I was standing over a sputtering fryer in the back of a rented garage that smelled like hot oil, spice rub, and sweat. A folding plastic table, one rusty deep fryer, and a handmade sign duct taped to the brick wall behind me. Brooks's Bites, soul in every bite. Yeah, that was my empire. At family dinners, they always sat me near the end of the table, like I might rub off failure on the nice linen. One Sunday, over Wagyu steaks and red wine that probably cost more than my week's grocery bill, Kate looked up from her plate and smirked. "Trevor," she said, slicing her steak with surgical precision, "how's the empire? Make what, $20 this week and a new burn mark?" She didn't even blink, just smiled like she was offering me a reality check wrapped in condescension. Zach chimed in without looking up from his MacBook. "You know what'd be a smart move? A job. You remember those, right? Something with dental insurance. What you've got, man, that's a hobby, not a business." And Mom? She didn't say much, just sipped her wine and offered her usual soft jab. "You're still in that garage, sweetie?" That garage. Like it was some basement dungeon I refused to leave. They didn't get it. They saw grease and grit and called it a waste of time. I saw something else entirely. I saw Harlem. I saw my grandmother in her worn apron, stirring a pot of collard greens on her back porch while the whole block lined up for her cornbread and wings. She didn't do it for money. She did it because food brought people together, gave them dignity, filled them with more than just calories. That smell, that memory, that's what I was trying to bring back, one plate at a time. But sure, to them, I was just the dreamer. They measured life by LinkedIn endorsements and job titles. I measured mine in napkin stacks, empty trays, and the looks people gave after that first bite, like their grandma just came back to life and kissed them on the forehead. Kate had her six-figure job. Zach had his quarterly bonuses. Mom had her avocado toast and hash successfully Saturdays. Me? I had fire. Not the kind that burns you, the kind that builds something. They didn't see it, not yet. What happened next? Oh, you'll want to buckle in for this. That garage. It didn't stay small for long. And the next chapter? That's where everything flips. The garage felt like a furnace. Not metaphorically, literally. No insulation, a busted fan, and oil crackling like it had something to say. My hands? Covered in calluses so thick they could have doubled his armor. The fryer burned through gloves like they were tissue paper, and I stopped counting the blisters after the first dozen. Money? That was a joke. Rent for the space kept climbing. And let's be real, fried chicken isn't exactly a gold mine when your customer base is 3 kids on bikes and a mailman who tips in quarters. Some days, I ate the leftovers. Some days there weren't any. And on the worst days, I just tightened my apron and pretended hunger was a business strategy. But then he walked in, scrawny kid, maybe 16, baggy hoodie, cracked phone screen in his pocket, sneakers with more duct tape than stitching. His name was Jamal, and I'd seen him before, usually outside the liquor store, asking folks for change and dodging judgment like it was a game he never signed up for. He stepped up to the counter and stared at my hand-chalked menu like it was written in Latin. His eyes did that quick math, the kind where you weigh your pride against your pennies, and he turned to leave. "Hey," I called out. "You got $1?" He froze, then shook his head. "No, sir." "Good," I said, sliding a tray across the counter. "Then sit your butt down. You're eating today. Tomorrow, just tell your friends." He looked at me like I'd handed him a winning lottery ticket. Sat on a crate, I called a seat, and tore through that basket of wings like it was the first real meal he'd had in a week. The next day, 7 kids showed up. Same neighborhood, same look in their eyes. Week later, 25. And a month from that moment, there was a line. A real breathing, buzzing line of people snaking out of the alley and around the block. Folks I'd never seen before, holding phones, snapping pics, telling stories about that chicken spot where the guy fed Jamal. See, it wasn't the food that caught fire, it was the gesture. One plate, one kid, one moment where someone didn't get judged, just fed. And that kind of kindness, it spreads like wildfire in a community that's starving for more than just food. I was still doing it all, cooking, packing, scrubbing pans until my wrists screamed. But now it meant something. And then came Damon, old army buddy. He used to run chow lines so efficient. They made the mess hall look like fine dining. He stopped by one Saturday, caught a whiff of my spice mix, and said, "Trey, this smells like home." Next thing I know, he's tying on an apron and slicing pickles like we were back in the field. We struck a deal, 50-50ths, no contracts, just trust. He brought the know-how, I brought the fire. Together, we rewrote the menu, added ghost pepper honey glaze, jalapeno slaw, cornbread so soft it made grown men close their eyes. Every item came with a story, a joke, a fist bump, a smile. We weren't just frying chicken, we were feeding people's souls. Word got out. Brooks's Bites wasn't just a food shack anymore. It was a movement, where the food was hot, the prices were low, and the respect, free of charge. People said, "It's just a garage." I said, "It's where the fire started." And what happened next? Let's just say the city wasn't ready. Stick around. The next chapter? That's when everything really explodes. Exactly 12 months after Jamal sat on that crate with a free plate of wings, I found myself towing my rust-stained food trailer down to Dayton for their annual Summer Street Fest. You ever seen those events? Chrome food trucks lined up like showroom cars, menus so pretty they could pass for art exhibits, LED signs, uniforms, Instagram influencers with ring lights and selfie sticks like it was a red carpet, not a food line. And then there was me. Brooks's Bites looked like it had survived a windstorm and a family reunion in the same week. My sign was still hand-painted. My menu? Printed at Kinko's and taped to the window. The trailer? Let's just say I used duct tape in places that would make a mechanic flinch. But when I fired up that fryer and honey hit the waffle iron, the air changed. The scent didn't just drift. It claimed territory. It slid past kettle corn stands, bulldozed through barbecue smoke, and landed square in the noses of every hungry person within a 5-block radius. First, it was one guy, then 5, then 20. By 2 p.m., there was a line stretching around the block, people craning their necks, asking strangers, "What's that smell?" One woman straight up skipped a gourmet lobster truck to stand in my line, said, "Whatever's cooking over here smells like my grandma came back from heaven just to throw down one more Sunday meal." Nobody cared about the trailer. They cared about the taste. Day 2, bigger line. Day 3, chaos. I had folks pulling folding chairs from their trunks and waiting over an hour for my chicken and waffle combo. Some were buying extra just to film it. Hashtags started popping up. Hash Brooks Bites Dayton, hash Garage to Glory, hash Soul Food Revival. That's when he showed up, pressed navy blazer, aviators, clipboard like he meant business. He stepped right up while Damon flipped wings and I was wiping sweat off my brow with an old rag. "Name's Greg Bennett," he said, reaching over the counter. "I represent Food Square Ventures. We specialize in culinary startups with soul. We want to invest." I blinked. "Invest?" He smiled. "Not just money, infrastructure, franchise roadmap, merchandising, app-based delivery, nationwide potential. We see this as more than a food trailer, Trevor. We see a brand." I nearly dropped the spatula into the fryer. He handed me a folder. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a pitch deck. It was a real investment proposal with numbers, with commas, with 6 zeros behind them. I drove home that night wearing a crisp branded polo with my own logo stitched across the chest. The folder sat in the passenger seat like a golden ticket. When I walked into the house, Zach was in his usual spot, feet on the ottoman, baseball game humming on the TV. He looked up as I stepped in with the Food Square folder under my arm. "I opened our second hub in Cincinnati," I said, tossing the folder onto the coffee table. "We've got full demand, franchise plan is in motion, and investors are on board." He blinked. "Wait, you're not joking?" "Check the last page," I said. He flipped to the back, read the number, looked up like he'd just seen a ghost. 6 figures. 20 years. 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 20 ye The same guy who once called my dream a hobby now couldn't form a sentence. Kate, silent. Mom? Staring at the folder like it had just bitten her. For once, the room that always had so much to say went quiet. You think that was the win? Oh no, that was just the door creaking open. Stick around because in the next chapter, Trevor stops knocking. He walks straight in. 2 years later, the world finally caught up to what that grease-splattered garage already knew. Brooks's Bites wasn't a fluke. It was a freight train, 6 locations, delivery across 6 states, a kitchen staff of over 120, a line of signature sauces that sold out online in under 48 hours, and a TikTok account. 1 million followers, thank you very much. A collab with the NFL dropped last month, limited edition gridiron glaze wings for game day, sold out in 3 hours flat. Not bad for a guy who used to sleep next to a fryer, but numbers weren't the sweetest part. Saturday night was. Trevor booked the grand ballroom of the Marriott downtown. Not just a dinner, a moment. He rented tuxedos for the staff, flew in his first 3 customers from Dayton as honored guests, and made sure there was more fried chicken on that buffet than a Southern wedding. Everyone was there, Mom looking proud and out of place in heels. Kate, wrapped in some corporate power dress. Zach, with that frozen half smile he wore when the world didn't make sense anymore. And right in the middle of the room, under a spotlight and behind a polished oak podium, stood a microphone. The chatter died down as Trevor walked up. Crisp suit, pocket square, confidence that didn't need volume to fill the space. Applause hit like thunder. He let it roll for a second. Then, with that same voice he used to take orders behind a plastic table, he said, 2 years ago I was told my dream was a hobby, that a garage couldn't be a business, that I wasn't a real entrepreneur, just a man with a fryer and a fantasy. He paused. The room was stone silent. And you know what? I'm grateful for every single person who said those things. You were the spark. Your doubt? That was my gasoline. He held up his glass, calm, steady. So tonight, this toast is not for success. It's for the ones who kept going when nobody clapped, for the ones who had to prove they weren't crazy, just early, and for everyone in this room who ever had to wait for others to catch up to their vision. Here's to those who believed in themselves when no one else did. Glasses clinked, chairs scraped, and then the crowd rose. Not out of politeness, not because the program told them to. They rose because they felt it. Kate looked down, blinking hard. Zach raised his glass, quiet for once. And Mom? She wiped the corner of her eye and whispered something to herself that only she heard. Trevor walked back to his seat, not as the underdog, but as the man who turned a garage and a recipe into a kingdom. What comes next? Let's just say the world hadn't seen the half of it. Chapter 5? That's when Trevor proves he's not just in the game, he's rewriting the whole playbook. 30 days after that standing ovation, Forbes dropped the headline that made boardrooms sit up straighter. From grease to glory, the man who fried his way to millions. The article went viral before lunchtime. Trevor's story wasn't packaged like your typical rags to riches tale. It wasn't clean. It wasn't polished. It was raw, stubborn, gritty. And that's exactly why people couldn't look away. They ran a double-page spread. On one side, a shot of his food, dripping honey over golden waffles, a glistening tray of hand-tossed wings. On the other, Trevor standing in front of his second location in a tailored, charcoal gray suit, arms folded, jaw set like a man who had walked through the fire and came out seasoned. But that was just the beginning. 2 months later, Netflix signed the deal. Not a cameo, not a guest appearance, a documentary series. Bites of Fire, The Brooks Legacy. A 5-part special. Cameras followed him into every kitchen. They rode with him to warehouse deliveries at 5 a.m., interviewed Jamal, now 18 and running operations at the original Dayton location, and captured every scar on Trevor's hands like chapters in a novel. They even visited the old neighborhood in Harlem, where his grandma used to cook for the block, and filmed him breaking down while holding her old cast-iron skillet. Streaming numbers exploded in the first week. Critics praised the show as an honest look at what happens when resilience refuses to stay small. Schools started showing clips in entrepreneurship classes. Business podcasts wouldn't stop quoting him. Hashtags flooded social media. Hash fried the doubt. Hash garage to glory. Hash Brooks built this. But for Trevor, it wasn't the press that hit the hardest. It was month 3. No interviews, no camera crew, no soundstage. Just a quiet Saturday morning and a short drive down the same weather-beaten roads that once carried doubt in every pothole. He pulled up to the same cracked driveway of the garage that started it all. The one with the dented side panel and the spot on the back wall where the grease never quite came out. The one they used to call the joke with a fryer. Only now Trevor owned it. Every brick, every nail. The paperwork was signed 2 weeks earlier. Cash offer, no negotiation. He stepped inside, and for a minute the world went still. The air still carried that faint scent of oil and wood. He ran his hand across the edge of the old folding table. The corner was still warped from that time Damon spilled a pan of hot mac and cheese. The ceiling fan was gone, but the heat? Still there, heavy and familiar, like a handshake from the past. Trevor didn't rebuild it, didn't upscale it. He restored it, faithfully. The only upgrades? A crystal clear glass display window where the garage door used to be, and a small, dignified brass plaque beside the register that read, "This is where it started. Never forget where you come from." But the most important detail, every Saturday without fail, Trevor came back to cook, himself, not for money, for them. The kids from the block, the moms barely holding it together, the old man who always showed up 20 minutes early just to sit and watch the fryer, the single dad who used to skip meals to feed his son, now showing up with both plates in hand, and when they asked, "How much?" Trevor just smiled and slid the tray across the counter. Paid in full. No tips, no strings. Just food with heart and dignity. Because Trevor remembered what it was like to be dismissed, to be told, "This isn't a real job," to be looked at like a man wasting his time in a garage while his siblings built resumes and portfolios. He remembered eating the scraps. He remembered Kate's smirk, Zach's chuckle, Mom's silence, and he turned all of it into fuel. Not just for him, but for everyone who was tired of hearing they weren't enough. People called him a millionaire, but truth is, Trevor didn't just build a business, he built a movement. One plate, one story, one community at a time. The final chapter? You'll want to stick around. Because what Trevor does next proves one thing. This was never just about fried chicken. It was about rewriting the rules and serving up respect, one bite at a time. Today, Trevor Brooks runs an empire, not the kind built on corner offices and golf memberships, but the kind that smells like fresh batter, sizzles with purpose, and fills neighborhoods with the sound of second chances. He's got hundreds of employees now, but here's the twist. Most of them, people nobody else would hire, ex-cons, high school dropouts, single moms, veterans with gaps in their resumes so wide they stopped applying, folks with passion but no paperwork, fire but no platform. Trevor didn't see liabilities. He saw potential. He gave them more than a job. He gave them dignity. Every Brooks Bites location, it isn't just a restaurant. It's a restart button. You walk in with doubt, you leave with a paycheck, and a little pride tucked into your apron pocket. And the family that once mocked him? Yeah, they came around. But not because he begged. Because he built something so undeniable, even the doubters had to take off their sunglasses and look straight at the light. Kate, Miss MBA consultant with the eye rolls and backhanded compliments, left her 6-figure job in corporate branding. Now, she runs marketing for Brooks's Bites Global. She's the one pitching collabs, shaping the merch, and making sure every story they tell hits home. Zach, who once said, "You need a real job," is now head of finance operations, overseeing a growing portfolio of food trucks, ghost kitchens, and community-based programs. And Mom? Mom started a YouTube channel, Mama Brooks Cooks. Over 1 million subscribers, Southern classics, family recipes, kitchen table wisdom. Every video ends with the same line. "This is how my boy learned to season more than just food. He seasoned life." They say revenge is sweet. But Trevor never served revenge. He served inspiration with a side of honey-drizzled waffles. He didn't rub success in anyone's face. He lived it loud enough that no one could pretend it wasn't real. And here's the lesson, the one that hit harder than any investment check or applause break. It doesn't matter how they see you. It matters how you see yourself. Because when they tell you you'll never make it, you don't argue. You don't beg. You turn up the heat, roll up your sleeves, and keep cooking. You fry, you build, you push. until the aroma of your progress drifts so far, even your critics stop and ask, wait, where's that coming from? And when they finally come around, just hand them a plate, smile, and say, told you it was real? That's it. That's the legacy. Not just about food, not just about money. It's about flipping doubt into belief and knowing that sometimes the best way to silence the noise is with the sound of success crackling in hot oil.